Hi, Kathleen. How
Hey,
are you?
Mark, how are you today? Good.
Good. I'm excited for this. This is the first webinar series that we're doing at Most, first of many, and we're excited to have you on as our first guest. I think we could wait a few minutes and let people join. How's your day going?
It's good. It's always so beautiful in the fall. It's a great time of year.
Fall in California, what's that like?
I'm actually in Washington State,
Oh,
so
true.
it's
Yeah, Washington.
beautiful up here, and I'm on the eastern side where all the mountains and things are, so I can be hiking
Yeah,
and outside and skiing and stuff. So, it's gorgeous this time of year.
yeah. I can imagine. It's the same in Canada. Lots of lots of colors on the trees and all that. So good. Well, I'm excited for this webinar. For those that don't know, the topic is returns. This is a topic that I know you're super passionate about. It's really important to businesses. Kind of an unsexy topic, I guess, but we got to talk about it. And we have some really amazing stuff, or you have some really amazing stuff today. You're the expert, and you've prepared some great content for us, some stick around to the end because I know you also have some assets to share with viewers, spreadsheets, checklists, templates, things that are really going to help businesses to reduce their returns. So I think I'm ready when you are. You good to go?
Great. Yep, let's get going.
So let me share a little bit about you, who you are, just high level, and then I really want to hear more from you. I don't want to be doing any of the talking here. So Kathleen is both a founder and fractional CEO, COO for e-commerce for over 20 years now. So that's a really extensive background in e-commerce. And today you're going to be sharing expertise, tools, advice, all kinds of great things from your field as an expert in the field in returns. That's sort of touching on your professional side. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are personally as well, and then let's jump into it. I think you have a presentation to share too.
I do. I made some slides. So as I said, I live in Washington State, and I'm over on the mountain side of the state, which I absolutely love. So I'm not on the Seattle rainy side. I'm on the other side, and we spend a
Good for
lot of
you.
time outside. We hike, we snow ski. The only thing I don't get to do here that's probably my favorite thing in the world to do is scuba diving. And I guess I could do it, but it's cold, cold in the lakes. So we travel for scuba diving, and I'd rather be under the water than anywhere else. So, so yeah, we try and stay pretty busy. We've got 5 kids, so that
Five
keeps us
kids.
busy. 5 kids,
I can
yeah.
imagine.
2 of them are in college right now, and last year we became empty nesters. So we're having a ball. Actually, we they come home for holidays, and it kind of messes up our schedule.
Is it like, should I say congratulations when someone becomes empty nesters? I don't know because I know it's also kind of a sad point in your life.
You know, it,
Congratulations, I
it's
guess.
it's sad when you drive away and they're crying and you're crying, and then about
Yeah,
2 weeks later, you're kind of in a flow.
it hits you.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's actually really great. Don't tell the kids.
Okay. I'll look forward to that. Okay, great. Well, thanks for that personal background. And then, maybe even I look, I shared 2 sentences. Anything you'd like to add from your professional background as well that could lead us into the topic that we're covering today?
Yeah, on the surface, it looks like maybe a boring topic or something that people kind of shove under the rug and forget. People get really excited about starting their e-com, and they get excited about finding a warehouse, and they get excited about designing their product, and they kind of just forget about returns. And it's just sort of a cost of doing business, and it's something that just sort of happens, but they don't really methodically think about it. And I guess part of what I want at the end of today is for brands to actually think about returns and think about how they handle them, and not only how they can get better relationship with their customers over the returns, because this is an opportunity to have a really good relationship with your customers, but also save money and put less pressure on the environment. So there are a lot of really good things about organizing returns that I think need to happen from an operational side.
Yeah, and that's something that stuck with me when we were preparing for this webinar. You mentioned that returns are always looked at as just a cost of business. And it's like, how can we change that mindset that it's like, no, it's just like anything else in e-commerce that you could optimize for, and you could actively work on improving, just like brands work on improving their customer acquisition and optimizing their conversion rates on their websites, right? Like, why would you look over this topic as well? Because it's more on your bottom line. So I'm happy that we came up with this topic, because it really just doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And, of course, I'm biased because I'm in ops, but I always say sales and marketing can drive your revenue, but ops can break your company.
Hmm.
And returns are a huge financial burden and also an operational challenge. And they don't have to be. They don't have to be a challenge. They can be something that you've prepared for and organized upfront. And hopefully by the end of this, we will give people some ideas on how to actually reduce their return rates. It's one thing to organize it and optimize it, but let's cut it back. Let's figure out how we can get customers keeping their products and not returning them.
You cut it at the source, and then
Yeah,
that's the best way. Great. Yeah, no, so I'm excited for this. I hope everyone else is as well. So yeah, let's get into it.
awesome. All right. I prepared some slides.
Slides are always helpful.
All right. Everybody can see that?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is just our, the subject that we designed for this when we decided to have it, how to cut your returns by up to 30%. That's a big deal. It's a big number. So I'll just jump right in here into the numbers of returns. Um, Super interesting when you start to get into the statistics of returns. Again, like we said, it's a financial burden, operational challenge, but there's a massive cost to it. So the average return rate for e-commerce is 30%. That is a lot.
That's
So,
a shocking number.
if we can get somebody's return rate down by an additional 30%, that's 9%, right? So they're down to 21%. They're good. Returns are always going to be happening, but let's try and do less of them. 92% of customers want the process to be easy. I know everybody watching, and you and me also are e-commerce fans, and we order things online. I mean, my husband thinks I make cardboard while he's at work, but returns happen, right? And you want it to be simple. 67% of customers are going to check the returns page on your website before they buy. So you might as well use that as an opportunity to speak to those 67%. They're looking at an additional page on your website. 80% of returns are because a product is damaged or broken. So we'll get into some of that in this webinar, but let's figure out how to package them so they don't get damaged. Let's figure out how to work with our manufacturer so they have better quality up front. So there's some different ways you can handle things beforehand. 26% of returns are clothing. That really surprised me. I thought it was bigger because everyone always talks about how clothing, apparel sales, that returns are their biggest headache. Well, it may be their biggest headache, but it's not the biggest category for returns. 49% of merchants offer free return shipping. And it is something that customers look for. Those 67% that are checking the page are looking to see how much it's going to cost them to return something. 60% read entirely through the returns policy. So they'll look at the fine print, which is kind of wild because most of us who are just in a hurry just click through and don't look at the details. Whoop, went too fast. There's the grand finale. In 2022, $212 billion of returns, and that's only for e-commerce.
Wow.
The real number is over 800 billion for commerce in general. So brick and mortar
That's a
plus
staggering number.
e-commerce. Yeah.
And you know what really stands out with me here, Kathleen, is the 92% of customers want the return process to be easy. I mean, 92%, it should be 100% who wouldn't want the return process to be easy, but just thinking about how easy that process is so important, because I'm personally, I'm reluctant to look outside of Amazon, just because I know that if something goes wrong on Amazon, the return process is easy. And I find that's always kind of
Absolutely.
what the benchmark. Of course, Amazon has set the benchmark for e-commerce standards across the board, and everyone's always comparing it to them. So if if you have the option of buying the same product or a similar product on Amazon and the return process is so much easier, it's just you're going to lose out on the business there. So that sticks out to me a lot.
That's really true. And even Amazon has been changing their policy on that. There's been a lot of talk about Amazon charging for returns. And and consumers are not real happy about that, about
No.
Amazon threatening that. But if you go in and buy something on Amazon, often it'll have in fine print on that, for that product on that page, it will have the returns policy and
Hmm.
whether they even accept returns and whether it gets sent back to Amazon or gets sent directly to the seller for Amazon. And then when you do return something on Amazon, sometimes it's returns are free, bring it to Kohl's or a UPS store. Other times it's you have to package it and get a label and pay for the label and send it back. But it's you don't really know until you initiate that return if it's going to be a difficult process or not.
Right. Hmm. So I imagine this has quite the financial impact on businesses, all these numbers. I mean, 212 billion alone is staggering.
Yeah, it does. And you know that 92% want it easy. Well, there are also statistics on what customer service and a good experience or a bad experience does on their ability to come back to you, on whether you're going to retain that customer or not. And a good customer experience will make them one time more likely to shop again. So they bought it, they liked it, they're going to come back to your website and buy another one, right? One time more likely to shop again. A bad customer experience will make them 4 times more likely to never return. And they'll put up a negative review, which is going to impact other people. So your customer experience starts with your customer service people, right? But also it's your website, it's your returns policy, it's how easy you make things, it's how friendly it is. And I'm not just talking about the tone of the person talking to the customer. I'm talking about the whole thing being friendly. That 4 times is really a huge statistic. You know, I always say, you know, one oh boy gets wiped out by half an oh no, right? But it's probably more
Right.
than that. It's probably, you know, 10 to 1, right? So you can do things well and people just sort of take it for granted. But if you don't do things well, it's coming back
They
to haunt
speak up
you.
more. Yeah,
Yeah.
people speak up more when they had bad experiences and like they just want a place to vent, and obviously that comes out in a lot of different ways, which ultimately is going to affect retention and also new customer acquisition. So I guess it's like rather than, I mean, you'll always want to do both sides, but rather than focusing on a good experience, preventing the bad experience is even more important. And I know that kind of sounds backwards and wrong, but I mean the numbers don't lie here.
No, it's true. You're gonna put more money in your bottom line by preventing a bad experience than you are by making someone else real happy and satisfied. People are more likely to put up a negative review and take that time than to put up a positive review for you.
Hmm.
So next, let's talk about costs, because obviously we're all running businesses, right? And there are direct and indirect costs of returns. And a lot of times people don't think down the chain of all of the different ways that you can total these things and actually run analysis on your returns and figure out what they actually are costing you. So you've got shipping and handling. You send it to the customer the first time, right? And then if you're paying for shipping and they're sending it back to you, you're paying again. Well, are you done? Well, no. Are you replacing it? Are you sending another one? There's the third time of shipping and handling. You're paying pick pack at your warehouse. That's the handling piece. You're shipping it 3 times for the one order. So you've already dug very deep into your profit margin. Restocking fees. Your warehouse is probably going to charge you for receiving that product back, opening it up, checking it, putting it back on a shelf. Loss of inventory. If it's broken, damaged, used, you can't sell it as new anymore. Packaging. The box that you're shipping it in 3 times,
That costs
and
money. Yeah.
you got three boxes. And there's
Yeah.
an environmental impact of that as well.
Yeah.
Storage fees. What is your warehouse doing with all the pallets of broken and damaged things that came back? Where are they? Are they just sitting in a corner at the warehouse and they're charging you for that? And customer service time. There's a true cost to that, right? You've hired people to answer these questions and to email and to send a mailing label and to work with the warehouse. You've hired people to handle all of that. And operations time. You probably have somebody, in addition to customer service, you have somebody working in operations. That person is managing this inventory. They're managing the relationship with the warehouse. They're ordering that packaging. Their hourly rate has to go into your direct costs as well.
This is so interesting, Kathleen, because every bullet point that came up, I thought, okay, wow, that must be it, but that's significant. And then there's another bullet point that comes up, another bullet point comes up, and I guess you don't even really take time sometimes to really outline this all together. And when you do dig into it, you realize just how many costs are involved here, and how many different people and parties of the business this actually touches. One thing that I would think about a lot personally when I order a product, and if I have to return it, is if the product is used and it can't be resold as new, do brands have a strategy for that to offload that inventory, or is that marked down altogether as a loss? Because I assume some brands don't want to sell. I know some brands like electronics will sell refurbished products, which I guess qualifies as that. But what's the overall best practice there for brands with return items that were used?
Well, and we have some things at the, later in the presentation that we'll talk in detail about all the different choices that a brand has for how to handle returns. But you're right. Often returns are either thrown away or unusable, or if it's something, a food product or a product that you touch with your mouth. I used to work for a company that sold straws. We could not take returns
Mm-hmm.
because it's not sanitary, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so those just have to be thrown away. They
Wow.
can't even be taken. So, but you're right, things like electronics products, clothing, etc., often those can be returns, and sometimes they can be resold as new, sometimes they can't. So again, that is additional costs, additional spreadsheets to figure this out. Very few brands have a spreadsheet to figure out what the cost of returns are. They're looking at cost of inventory. They're looking at the cost of customer acquisition. They're looking at their marketing. They're looking at how much their website costs. They're looking at how much their warehouse costs, but they're not thinking about the cost of returns. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, that direct cost was a big list, but there's also indirect costs that people aren't even thinking about, that again are a check that you are writing at the end of the month. So you've got customer dissatisfaction that we were just talking of.
Mm-hmm.
If they put a negative review up, that's going to cost you other customers. So that's indirect. How do you put that on a spreadsheet? You've got, again, negative reviews. You've got your brand reputation. If you get a lot of that, if people are talking about you a lot like that, very few customers are going to want to interact with your website, but also vendors and partners are going to check that. I've worked with warehouses that actually look at reviews of companies to figure out if they want to work with them or not, to figure out
Mm-hmm.
whether they think it's a good fit. So if they're searching the CEO or the company and they're seeing a lot of really negative stuff, then that is going to impact whether vendors even want to work with you, whether they will take on your account. That's a huge indirect cost. The environmental impact, like we talked about with the 3 boxes, there is a significant cost and charge to the environment for moving these products around more than once. This is go down. This is a tool that I developed in conjunction with a company called Freight that is a returns company. And we'll be sending this out to people who give us their email at the end of this presentation. But what it allows you to do is look at what your actual time is. So the return was reported. It took 3 days to approve it. The item got shipped out. The item was received back. We did a quality verification, and then a replacement was sent out. So that was 15 days and 4 man hours.
Wow.
At
Wow.
$20 an hour, that one return cost $80. If you're
Wow.
paying your people more than that, $30, that became 120. So down here, you can look at your average order value. You can plug in your number, $250. Number of returns per month, let's just say 25. The value of your returns good is $6,200.
Wow.
30% non are not in their original condition, you're going to have to depreciate those. Here's your shipping costs, your handling costs, and you can plug in things here. There's the direct return cost. So you had your return goods value of $62.50, and then you've spent another $115. Then if you're offering free returns, your total annual return label is $3,000. Now we're going to add the cost per month above from the hourly rates. It's growing, right? Your total cost for those returns for the year is $46,000.
That could eat into margins quite fast. Yeah.
That's a lot of money. That's an entire person. That's paying an entire person $46,000. So that's one more staff member you could hire if you aren't spending this much money on returns.
But this looks like a very helpful sheet, Kathleen. This is great that you put this together. I mean, this is going to be, I think every brand that sells products online should take a look at this, and at least as an exercise, plug in some numbers and see what their true cost of returns are.
Absolutely. And again, like we talked about, we'll send a link to this.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, if they registered for the webinar, they'll send it automatically. We'll send it automatically rather than them having to enter their email again. But yeah, thank you for this.
So it's also important to have a tracking data sheet, because again, knowledge is power, right? It's really, really important to collect it. So you need to collect the common reason for returns, and you need to have a worksheet in order to do that. And so what I've got here is the same thing. So you're putting it in here, and up here's a calculation. Total direct cost equals cost of shipping, cost of return shipping, etc. So it's allowing you to calculate that, but it's also allowing you to track it. So your customer service people can fill this in and fill in what was wrong. If it's a warranty item, they can check this box. At the end of every month, you better be sending the total to your supplier, right? If they are sending you product that has warranty claims on it, then you're going to need to get some compensation for that. So this is a great way to track that and know what you need to charge your manufacturer for that. So we have, the shipping cost, repair cost, return cost, revenue loss. So all of those are part of this. And then in this, you can say, okay, what do we do with this? So wrong item was sent, we replaced it, right? So then you can keep track of what's happening in your returns environment with this data sheet.
This looks really simple, easy to use, but extremely helpful. That's good.
And this is the same document we just looked at before. The calculator's back there.
Just a different
data
tab.
sheet is here. Yeah, just a different tab. So we'll provide that to everyone who came here. So it's really important to collect this information, right? The order information, the time information, why it was returned. You've got to start tracking that, because if it's warranty and damage, then you're going to have a conversation with your supplier. And if you're not tracking the reasons, then you don't know to be having that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you don't have the data and you're getting all kinds of returns and you are not actually tracking what is the most common reason, then you can actually improve on that and actually get to the source of minimizing these returns. So
exactly. You'll see patterns.
Yeah. And as the patterns emerge, that's how you kind of tackle them, and that could have a big impact on returns overall.
Yeah, and every month I recommend that your operations people review that sheet and review the reasons for return, because if you see a pattern, it gives you an opportunity to go and fix it. So then the following month, then you can actually have real data and real numbers on what percentage of those returns were changed. If you can reduce them by the decisions that you make in this month, so that in October you have less returns, then you have saved money and time and hassle. So one of the things I like the customer service team to have is a returns checklist. And again, this is another document that we'll provide for everybody. So initially you verify, is the return within the return policy window? Is it in original condition? Your warehouse will tell you that when they receive it. Time analysis. Was the request approved within 24 hours? So how are your people internally doing on responsiveness to the customer? Again, that goes to that good experience versus bad experience. Was the return item processed within 48 hours of receiving? That's a warehouse SLA, right? So then you can track whether your warehouse is staying on top of the things they promised. If they're not, then that's another conversation to be having. Reason analysis. What was the reason and did you log it and categorize it? Is there a pattern in the reasons? Then start looking at the cost. Was the direct cost calculated? Is it within acceptable range? If it's way out of range, the cost was more than what you sold the product for, that's another analysis you need to be doing in-house and determining whether it was worth it. Maybe you stop offering free returns if the cost of taking that return is higher than what you sold the product for. Feedback loop. Did your team talk about the insights? Did they talk about the patterns? Did they talk about what they're seeing? They need to know. Sales needs to know. Maybe they need to decrement a certain product. Operations needs to know because they're handling the movement of all of those goods and they're ordering inventory. Finance needs to know because they are budgeting. The CEO needs to know because maybe they negotiated with the supplier. So that feedback loop internally is critical.
Mm-hmm.
The supply chain and logistics team. Are you sharing those insights with the warehouse? This is the most likely product to come back for return. Here's how we want you to handle it. Here's an SOP. Did you share those insights with the supplier? Again, if it's something coming back consistently in warranty, even a clothing item, maybe the seams are loose or the pockets have holes in them, you've got to share that with your supplier. They're going to want to know. They want to turn out a good product.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Kathleen, as you're going through all this, like how is this impacted when we talk about larger volume, right? Like on a certain scale, there's a certain management of it, but if you get into large volume of returns, how are the complexities different with that?
Well, I mean, you can multiply all of your numbers, but also that goes into a lot of things that you're doing to create volume discounts, right? You're creating volume discounts with your carriers, with your warehouse, with your suppliers. And the returns are going to impact all of those things because you're moving the goods around extra time. And maybe you don't want to buy in bulk next time because that supplier maybe isn't the greatest option and you need to find a new supplier. So that's going to change all of that. Returns can also happen on a B2B level. Maybe you sold, 7 pallets of something to Target and half of them got returned to you by Target. You've got to figure out why, because you have just damaged your relationship with Target.
Interesting.
So again, with our tools, here's another document that we will share. So this first section was the worksheet that we reviewed just now. And then here's that checklist that I just gave. So we'll provide this with everybody so that you can remember what steps are best practice.
Great.
So triage after the return. When I pulled this image down, I was laughing. But the reason why I pulled this image down was I actually had an actual client that had a returns process that was so complicated. They sent me a flow chart to review, and it was over 120 steps for one product. There were a lot of people touching that product, repair, replace, refund, and it went through all of the different steps. It didn't look like this, but it might as well have for how many steps it had. And the first thing I told them was, how many people internally are touching this return? Because there's a huge direct cost of that. It needs to be more organized, right? So you want to triage first. If it's a warranty, you want to make a claim to the supplier. You need to keep the spreadsheet. You need to do product testing. You need to inspect. You need to do proof of disposal. Maybe you don't want it back from the customer. They send you pictures or a video of how bad it is, how broken it is. And then they send you proof of disposal. And then you're not paying for all of that back and forth shipping. Maybe it's something you can repair, like you mentioned, refurbished electronics. Are you going to repair it in-house? Are you going to repair it outside, outsourced? There's a company called Upsy. Super interesting. They have repair technicians in cities all over the US. So they have agreements with brands where a certain item, maybe an air purifier, rather than being shipped back to the brand, they take it to one of these technicians by Upsy and get it fixed, and then they take it back home. Manufacturer.
And I guess, sorry to jump in here,
oh, that's
Kathleen,
okay.
but with Upsy, I assume that the brand obviously bears the cost of that technician to repair, which after 9-10 slides up until now, it's very evident that even paying a repair technician to go and fix it on the spot if it's within warranty or whatnot, is still, you're still coming out ahead than taking that product back and going through all the
It's still
steps that,
right.
yeah.
It's still less expensive. And
Hmm.
say it's out of warranty, right? Or for some other reason the brand is not going to pay for that repair. Maybe the customer bought it and didn't really look at their own system, and it's not quite right. I did that once. I bought a heater, a swimming pool heater, that I thought I'd gotten the right one for natural gas, but I actually bought a propane one. So it needed a different valve put on it, and it would have cost me as much to ship that heater back to the manufacturer as it costs to pay someone to come out and swap out that valve. So sometimes there's an option where something can be done, but it doesn't require sending it back. And in that case, I took on the cost of that, because as a consumer, I evaluated, what's it going to cost to ship this back? This thing weighs 800 pounds, right?
And
And
even if you're bearing
having a
that
technician was
cost,
better. Yeah.
right, and
Sorry.
and even if you're bearing that cost yourself as the shopper, I mean, this also goes back to your indirect cost to the brand of that experience, right? If I as a brand still say, okay, look, like, you're outside of the warranty, but good news, we have an Upsy rep right around you. They'll be there in the next 48 hours. Like, even if that still happens to me, that's still a much, much better experience than just leaving me hung out to dry, which ties into that satisfaction piece of it, which is so important.
Well, yeah, and like, rather than having a pool heater that didn't work, that I was dissatisfied with, this thing's amazing. And so I'm a friend of the company now as a consumer, even
Hmm.
though I had to pay to have that valve changed, because it's a great product and I
Yeah,
kept it.
yeah.
So it's a really important distinction. Sometimes the manufacturer wants it back. Sometimes they want to take care of the repair. You can replace it, just send them a new one, or you can just give them a refund and just call it good and shake hands as friends. But as part of that triage, you need to make all of those determinations. So again, this is a much cleaner flow chart than the other one. So you can look at it and decide, and many less people touch the product when you have a more organized flow of triage to decide what to do with it. Returns management, you brought this up at the beginning. So there are a lot of different ways to handle returns. Sometimes they're a fact of life and you can't prevent them. So what are you going to do with them? Right? There are different ways. So there's a company called Two Boxes that actually makes a software for warehouses that has a tablet, and a return comes in and they go through that process through Two Boxes. And so there's a whole step process that goes through, but it enables warehouses to better manage them. It gives them opportunity to take a photo of it, and that photo goes back to the brand so they see what condition it's in. So you can have a much better experience and a better relationship with your warehouse over these returns, but you also have better experience with your customers because they're being handled faster and more efficiently. You can resell and liquidate them or consign them. I've talked to a couple different, one up in Canada and one in the US, that will take liquidation. So maybe you have a whole pallet of things that got returned and you want to get a little money out of them. And so you'll resell them via consignment or a liquidator. And they will just pick up your pallet and resell them. And then maybe you get 30 cents on the dollar. You can resell to another customer. Very interesting. Freight Returns offers a an app that's in addition to your platform. So if somebody wants to do a return, they click on returns on your website and it actually goes into their software, but it still looks like it's it's branded for you. It's still your website. It offers that customer that wanted to return it a discount on their next order if they hang on to it for a week and possibly just ship it to a second customer if it's still in resellable condition. And so then
Interesting.
this second customer is buying it. First customer is shipping it directly to the second customer through freight, which is a very interesting model for how to handle returns and resell them as either new or slightly used. So still maintaining a bit of your profit margin, but not moving them around as much, right? You're not going to bring it back to the warehouse and then send it to the new customer. You're going to go directly from customer one to customer two. So way less handling of that unit. You're not paying any warehouse services or operational services at all for that. Your customer A is shipping to customer B. You can reduce the sale price, put it on your own website, have a section of your website for, gently loved products. There are e-commerce marketplaces where you can list things. Halfback is one of them, where you can actually list all of those products that are gently used and returns, and people will buy them. Facebook Marketplace does a lot of that as well. There are ways to do easy return logistics. Return Bear does that up in Canada, real similar to what I spoke of at the beginning with the Amazon, where you want to do an Amazon return and they say bring it to a Kohl's store or a UPS store for free. So Return Bear has that. They have those locations across Canada where somebody can bring something in, and then they process it. If all else fails, donate it. You can get a tax deduction on that. So it's not the worst way to go, and also really could help a bunch of people. I know a company here where I live, where they provide backpacks for homeless people, and they fill them with the things that people need. They tend to get liquidated things that are slightly used or new but can't be resold, and they'll fill up the backpacks with those things. And so they're doing a great community service, and it enables the company who donated, socks or school supplies or whatever, to take a tax deduction on that donation.
That's a great option. These are all really great options. And by the way, we'll include the slides as well to anyone watching after this, so they could go in and look at some of these companies you've highlighted here as great tools and resources.
Yeah, and I'm happy to put together a document that has links to all the other websites and even a contact person to talk to there. All of these companies that I've listed here are people that I've personally spoken to and interviewed about what they provide and what the benefit of it is. And in preparation actually for this webinar, I actually spoke to a lot, and these were my favorites, which is why they ended up here.
That's good to know. It has the Kathleen stamp of approval, so that's helpful.
So let's get to the good stuff. Let's reduce them. Let's do some proactive strategies. We don't have to be reactive. Everything we talked about up until now is reactive, right? You ship something out, customer doesn't want it, you have to react. So let's get proactive. Let's figure out how to not have returns in the first place. Enhanced quality control. Number one, that first statistic that I gave you about how much is broken or defective, let's do quality control at the factory level or at the warehouse level and fix it before you send it out. Manufacturing inspections, warehouse inspections upon arrival. A lot of warehouses will do this for an extra fee. When you analyze the extra fee of having them inspect it when it arrives, it's overall probably still a lot cheaper than filling out that spreadsheet on returns. Warehouse inspection upon packing. Instead of having to do it when it arrives, maybe they shelve it, put it all away, and before they put it in a box, they just quickly open it, close it, put it in, send it back. They're probably not going to charge you an hourly rate for doing that because they're already packing. They already have the product out. So they can just open up your box, make sure the foam is in there, make sure there's no broken pieces right before they ship it out. The warehouse is the last people to touch your product before the customer does. Your relationship with the warehouse can inform a lot of quality issues. Flexible return policies. Like we talked about at the beginning, a major portion of customers will look at your return policies before they buy. So if they understand what your return policies are and they've really done their research, maybe they're less likely to return it. Accurate and detailed product descriptions. I can't emphasize this enough. Your Shopify site or whatever you're using to sell, WooCommerce, Magento, Amazon, make sure you're very detailed in your product description. That pool heater that we talked about, I bought gas heater for a certain elevation and clicked on it and was off and running, right? When I tried to return it because I had bought propane, the only difference was a -P in the SKU instead of a -N for natural gas. They didn't have anything in the description about propane versus natural gas. It was just just one little letter in the SKU. The more accurate and the more detailed you are, the more likely the customer is to buy the right one.
Yeah.
Customer education, same thing. You can do a lot to teach your customers about the products. You can even do YouTube videos after the fact. So when maybe somebody contacts you, they want to do a return, you send them a YouTube video on how to set it up, how to use it, how to maximize it, and they decide, wow, I'm going to keep that. how-to guides, video demonstrations, pre-purchase customer references. This, Mark, is where I want you to talk. When we met and you showed me what you were doing, I was really excited about it because I think that especially for an expensive purchase, most can be a game changer for some brands and the customers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for plugging us in here. I mean, it does go hand in hand, and this, this just is a happy coincidence that we're talking about a topic that most actually has an impact on helping brands with. But the idea is very simple. Your customers do have questions about the product, as you've alluded to. Sometimes the descriptions aren't fully accurate. Sometimes they need more information. Sometimes they want to try it before they purchase it online. I mean, the bottom line is there's only so much you can infer from a one-dimensional product on your screen, and the ability to talk to an existing customer owner, an existing person that owns a customer that uses that product in the same context that you're going to use it in. For example, going back to your purchase of your pool heater, like someone that's using that same product in Washington, in the same area that you're using it, that's a very, very relevant, highly personalized and localized testimonial. Well, that could have a big impact on the brand's return rates as well, because now the customer is a little bit more informed and kind of knows what they're getting before the product arrives in the mail, and reduces that kind of surprise element. So yes,
Absolutely. Yep.
most is a tool that slides in here. Yeah.
Yeah, if that heater company had been using most, I would have spoken to someone and they would have said, "Hey, be careful between propane and natural gas. Make sure to order the one that's -N," right? It would have saved a big headache
Exactly.
on my part and a few $100s in labor cost. So yeah, I'm a big Most fan now.
No, thank you.
So AI and machine learning for predictive analytics. There's a lot you can do internally to figure out what is more likely to be returned than something else. You can predict it. You can look at patterns. You can look patterns of similar products, and you can pre-plan and be proactive about that product.
That's cool.
You can use virtual product trials. I don't know if you've been on any of the websites where maybe you're buying furniture and you can, see it in your room, right? So you use your camera on your phone or your tablet in your room, and it actually puts that couch right there in front of you, and you can see how that works, how it might look. There are clothing brands that are using this for virtual try-on, right, where the people put in their height and their weight and their size and their measurements, and then the system will put that dress on that model, and you can say, "Wow, that would look like crap on me," and not buy it and get something else.
Warby Parker, I think, is one of the
Yes.
I don't want to say the leader, but I know they do this. You could, if you're looking at glasses on your phone, they have this kind of VR where you could the glasses will superimpose on your face and you can see how they look. And I've tried it actually. It's surprisingly accurate and works pretty well. And by the way, for some of these options and tips that you're sharing here, what I've seen certain e-bike brands do, I see this a lot in that category, but I think it can apply to a lot of other product categories as well, is also have kind of your video demonstrations tool where you could actually FaceTime a rep at the company and they'll do like a FaceTime walkthrough of the product too. So kind of touches on the video side of things. Now, of course, that takes a lot of bandwidth. If you have customers FaceTiming you every day, and some of them are chatty, they could take 30, 40 minutes of your time. But yeah,
But if you're selling a very expensive product, it could be well worth it.
It could be worth it. Exactly.
Yeah. Chatbots for real-time customer support. Now with the advance of AI, there are a lot more of that, and it's not necessarily your customer service person answering the question, especially if it's common questions, right? What is the wheel radius on that bike? What is this? What is that? And then the chatbot will answer that question. The person then has learned, they've been educated, and they're ordering the right product because they've asked some questions. Reviews are critical, and like we talked about at the beginning, consumers are more likely to review when they're unhappy than when they're happy. So it's really important to encourage those reviews from people who are happy.
Amazon, by the way, just is launching, Kathleen, a review summary. Some products will have 2,000 plus reviews on it, you're not going to obviously read through all those reviews. They'll have this AI tool that will summarize the 2,000 reviews and give you like quick bullet points on the what are the highlights, what are the things to look out for when purchasing this product. I thought that was pretty cool and
Yeah,
helpful.
that is. And again, it's that education piece. People would be like, oh, 70% of reviewers say this runs small. I better size up.
Exactly.
So one of the things that we talked about before we started here was that we wanted to talk about some real world examples of a return, and then how it was handled in a best practice way. So I've got a few to look at. So clothing retailer, they have a high return rate due to sizing issues, just like we were just talking about. Solution, virtual fitting room. Now people have an idea. Oh, that doesn't look like it fits. I need a bigger size. An electronics store, high returns due to defective items. They have to do enhanced quality checks before shipping and reviews from existing customers. Then you're less likely to buy it if a lot of people say it's defective, or return it if it's been inspected and we know that it's not defective. A furniture store, these are big items, right? It's very expensive to ship. Returns due to a color mismatch. Have augmented reality view or references from customers. Customers can say, well, the green is a little bit darker than it looks like on the screen, right?
Our
Then
most.
yeah, or
Yeah.
most, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm curious, Kathleen, this is a really interesting exercise just to have like on one hand input the product category and on the other hand output the most maybe common reason for a return. I'm sure there's data on that out there, and then in relation to that, kind of tie in what the potential solution is. I wonder if there's a tool out there, maybe of this. If not, this is like seems like a very helpful and good use case for some AI tool that you could just plug in your category and then it'll plug out the number one issue for returns, and then the number one kind of solution on how to address that ahead of time.
That's a super good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to go look. And
Yeah,
for
someone's working on
anybody,
it somewhere.
yeah. And for anybody who's watching, if you know of that, let us know. Find us on LinkedIn. Tell us, because we want to meet those people.
For sure.
All right. Key takeaways. It's not just a cost-cutting exercise to reduce your returns. It's a strategy, right? You can enhance your profitability. You can be proactive instead of reactive. You can have better customer loyalty. You can turn losses into gains. There is absolutely nothing that is a bad idea in terms of being more proactive with your returns and doing it up front. Implementing an efficient return strategy is a step towards being more sustainable. I'm a huge fan of sustainability. I've worked for a number of different companies that have built products that are all about being kinder to the earth. And returns are a really expensive thing on the earth. They have high carbon footprint and a lot of waste. So it's nice if we can cut back on that.
Yeah.
And then that's now I'm done. You jump in. So, and I wanted
Now
to
I jump in.
remind everybody that we have all of these tools that will make sure everybody gets a copy.
Kathleen, this was incredible. I mean, this whole presentation was jam-packed with like really important tips and tricks. And I mean, even myself just watching this, there's so much that I already learned, because again, like we said in the beginning, this is just not a topic that you really dive into. And once you do dive into it, you realize just the implications it has, how much, I mean, I don't envy, whoever's in charge of operations and logistics for these brands, because clearly now I have a newfound respect for that role, because there is so much and you have to be organized, you have to be on top of it. And I mean, I just think that it's great that, brands are always looking for new cost-cutting initiatives or new ways to at the end of the day, it's about boosting the bottom line, especially in 2024 and beyond. I think that profitability is going to continue. I know in 2023, it's been kind of resurgence in, I mean, it seems counterintuitive to say that's really the kind of metric for evaluating companies now, is going back to profitability rather than just top line revenue. And when looking at that, like, this should be front and center, because it seems like there are a lot of these tricks and tips that you've outlined here. You can almost know that you could see the results that you're going to get from it ahead of time. It's very predictable. Whereas if I, make adjustments and I'm A/B testing my paid media campaigns on Facebook and Google, I mean, yes, there's a certain science to it and I could improve results, but it's harder to have predictable, steady results from that. Or on my CRO, right? My conversion rate optimization on my website, it's a lot of guess and check. Whereas here, we could pull up one of these checklists, start checking them off one by one, and you will see the results come through.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's an immediate. You make a change in September, and you're going to see it in October. You'll be able to see the difference on your worksheets. You'll be able to see the percentages change. So it's very immediate. Brands will spend a lot of time finding and sourcing products. They need to spend the same amount of time making sure the customers want to keep them.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it. This is great. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take questions by email after this. And if there's anyone that wants to that's watching and wants to connect with you, they might have further questions, or even maybe want an audit on their logistics, or even just speak to you directly. What's the best way that they could get in touch with you, Kathleen?
Yeah, they can connect with me on LinkedIn, or my website is sullygarman.com. So it's just Kathleen at sullygarman.com. But happy to help, happy to answer any questions. Really excited to share the tools that we created for this webinar, and I also will create a contact list of the companies that I recommended.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And just to recap, there's the checklist, there's the spreadsheet. Do you want to just recap the tools that they'll get by email after
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, so there's the checklist, and then there's the worksheet where you're collecting the data. So the information about the order and the date of purchase and all of that. And then the time metrics, you're analyzing how much time you're spending on this return. And then the checklist, just to make sure that it has hit all of the timing targets that you needed to, in terms of to accept the return. There is the calculator, so you can calculate what your cost of returns are. There's the data sheet that you will collect all of your returns information in, and that will also inform your warranty claims with your manufacturer. And then I've also included a page that's on cost modeling. So how to model different variables and figure out your sales revenue, your lost revenue, your net revenue, your margins. So as part of the spreadsheet, I've included that modeling exercise.
Yeah, that's really helpful. These are really, really great assets. So you could keep an eye on your inbox, and we'll drop them automatically by email. Kathleen, this was great. Thank you for taking the time to put this together and share with our audience. We look forward to doing another one of these with you because they're so helpful. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kathleen. Take care.
Thank you.